The Elizabethan Curriculum, a classical education for the modern man. Lecture 22. Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, the play that thinks. Julius Caesar was probably written in 1599, the same year as Henry V and As You Like It, and the beginning of Hamlet. It was at the height of his powers, and he knew it. And Julius Caesar has the particular quality of a work produced by someone who has fully mastered his instrument and is now asking what the instrument can actually do. It is the most intellectually controlled of all his plays. Not the deepest, not the most emotionally overwhelming, but the most precise, the most architecturally perfect. The play in which every scene and every speech is exactly what it needs to be and doing exactly what it needs to do. It is also, as we noted in the previous lecture, the play that Essex Circle found dangerous enough to commission 2 days before an armed rebellion. Understanding why requires us to read it more carefully than its reputation as a school text has sometimes allowed. It is not a play about the evils of tyranny. It is not a play about the virtues of the Republic. It is a play about the gap between intention and outcome, between what people believe they are doing and what they are actually doing, between the story a man tells himself about his own motives and the motives that are actually driving him. In this sense, it is the most Plutarchan of Shakespeare's plays, because Plutarch is precisely the biographer of that gap. Shakespeare takes his material almost entirely from North's Plutarch, the life of Caesar, the life of Brutus, and the life of Antony, and he follows his sources with a fidelity that is itself a statement about the quality of the material. North's Plutarch needed very little improvement. What Shakespeare does is not improve it, but concentrate it, select from it, arrange it so that the biographical material becomes dramatic structure, so that the psychological observations Plutarch makes over hundreds of pages are compressed into scenes of a few minutes that deliver their meaning with theatrical immediacy. The play opens not with Caesar, but with the tribunes, Flavius and Morellus, dispersing a crowd of citizens celebrating Caesar's triumph. This opening is carefully chosen. We are inside the constitutional machinery of the Republic from the first scene. The tribunes are doing their job, which is to represent the people. And what they are doing in the name of the people is suppressing the people's celebration of the man who may be about to end the system that gave tribunes their power. The contradiction is present from the first minute of the play, and it never resolved. Caesar himself, when he appears, is immediately doubled, is simultaneously the great man, commanding, authoritative, the center of every room he enters, and the man with the falling sickness, the man who is deaf in one ear, the man who sweated and groaned and cried, "Give me some drink," Titinius during his fever in Spain, the man who is, in Cassius's devastating account, merely a man no more capable of bearing the weight of the world than Cassius himself. Shakespeare is doing exactly what Plutarch does. He is showing you the greatness and the humanity simultaneously and refusing to let either cancel the other. The conspiracy scene in which Brutus talks himself into the assassination through a process of reasoning that the play presents with complete clarity and complete irony simultaneously is one of the most remarkable pieces of dramatic writing in the language. Brutus's soliloquy in his orchard begins with the conclusion and works backward to find the premises. He has already decided. What he is doing in the soliloquy is constructing the justification after the fact, finding the argument that will make the decision he has already made feel like a rational conclusion rather than a choice. It must be by his death. That is the first line. Not, it might be. Not, perhaps it should be. Must. The logic that follows is the logic of a man whose conclusion is already written and who is searching for the premises to support it. Shakespeare understands this about Brutus with a precision that is almost clinical, and he understands it without condemning it. But this is how people actually reason about difficult decisions. The decision comes first from the depths of character and desire and fear, and the reasoning comes second to make the decision legible to the self and to others. Brutus is not a hypocrite. He genuinely believes the reasoning he constructs. The play's irony is that the reasoning he constructs is wrong in its premises and catastrophic in its consequences, and he will never fully understand why. Cassius is the other engine of the conspiracy, and Shakespeare's Cassius is considerably more interesting than a simple villain. He is, as Plutarch noted, a man of sharp intelligence and genuine republican conviction who is also personally motivated by envy of Caesar in ways he is not fully honest about even to himself. His seduction of Brutus in the first act, the lean and hungry speeches about Caesar being merely a man, is brilliant political manipulation and also genuine friendship and also envy dressed as principle, all three simultaneously, which is how human motivation actually works and which a simpler playwright would not have managed. The assassination itself, in the third scene of the third act, is handled with a restraint that is itself a dramatic choice. Caesar dies quickly. He does not have a dying speech. He has three words, et tu brute, and then he says, for Caesar, and falls, and is silent. The brevity is devastating precisely because the play has been building toward this moment for 2.5 acts. The conspirators stand over the body, and Brutus says they are Caesar's friends who have abridged his time of fearing death, which is one of the play's most bleakly ironic lines. The man who has just committed the act, telling himself it was a kindness. And then Antony arrives. Mark Antony's funeral speech is the technical centerpiece of the play and one of the supreme demonstrations of rhetorical method in the English language. Shakespeare has been building toward it throughout the Cicero module, throughout the rhetoric lectures, throughout everything this course has established about how persuasion works, and here it is in practice. The speech is a masterclass in exactly the technique Cicero described and that we discussed in Module 3. Brutus speaks first in prose, which is itself a rhetorical choice. Prose for the republican, verse for the man of feeling. Brutus's speech is a model of Stoic argument, clear, structured, logical, appealing to reason and to the civic virtue of the audience. It works. The crowd is convinced. They shout that Brutus should be Caesar. Brutus has won the argument in the forum. An Antony speech begins by honoring the agreement he has made with Brutus, that he will not blame the conspirators, will speak only in praise of Caesar. He is an honorable man, and so are they all honorable men. The repetition of honorable men is the engine of the entire speech. The phrase that begins as an acknowledgement and ends as a weapon, each repetition loading it with more irony until by the end it has inverted its own meaning completely, and the crowd that was shouting for Brutus is shouting for Antony and hunting the conspirators through the streets. This is rhetoric, as Cicero described it, and as Quintilian systematized it. The appeal to emotion through apparently conceding the argument, the use of physical evidence, Caesar's wounds, his will to bypass rational argument entirely and go straight to the gut. The management of the crowd's mood through tempo and repetition and the strategic deployment of silence. Antony does not argue that Brutus was wrong. He makes the audience feel that Brutus was wrong, which is more durable and more dangerous than any argument. Brutus lost not because his reasoning was weaker than Antony's, but because he was operating in the wrong register. He gave the crowd a rational argument when what the crowd needed and wanted was an emotional experience. He treated the citizens of Rome as if they were senators capable of following a logical demonstration when they were in fact a mob in grief, susceptible to the precise techniques that Antony deployed with instinctive mastery. The education that made Brutus capable of the conspiracy made him incapable of managing its aftermath. The second half of the play, the quarrel between Brutus and Cassius, the ghost in the tent, Philippi, the deaths, follows Plutarch so closely that North's prose is sometimes audible beneath Shakespeare's verse. The quarrel scene in particular, in which Brutus accuses Cassius of corruption, and Cassius responds with wounded fury, and the two men who have staked everything on a shared enterprise reveal how different their understanding of that enterprise actually was, is pure Plutarch transformed into pure Shakespeare, which is to say it is human behavior, observed with a precision that neither the biographer nor the playwright could have achieved alone. The play ends with Antony's eulogy over Brutus's body. This was the gentlest of them all. His life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say to all the world, "This was a man." It is the most generous possible epitaph for someone who has just lost everything, and it is delivered by the man who defeated him, and it is also, characteristically for this play, doing more than one thing simultaneously. Antony is being genuinely generous, is also consolidating his political position by demonstrating magnanimity in victory. Both things are true. The play does not choose between them. It holds them together in the same moment and trusts the audience to feel the complexity. This is what the Elizabethan classical education produced in its greatest flowering. A playwright who had absorbed Plutarch and Cicero and Virgil so completely that he could generate from them a drama that illuminated the present through the past without reducing either to a simple lesson that held the full moral complexity of its material without flinching, and that trusted its audience, the groundlings and the gentlemen alike, to be equal to that complexity. They were, they are, which is why we are still performing it. End of Lecture 22.